Go ahead.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. On this beautiful day, November the 2nd, 2021. I am Belinda Parker Brown with Louisiana United International. We are a civil constitutional human rights organization, especially committed to eliminating unlawful discrimination here in the state of Louisiana. But most of all, we focus on the entire country when it comes to unlawful discrimination or any type of wrongdoing, especially in our legal system or judicial. So I just want to take the time out and welcome everyone to this very important, necessary event on today. We have some phenomenal guests that is going to be joining us here shortly. But I just want to give a little housekeeping rules that that's going to allow you to participate and engage into this conversation at some point in time. We may even be streaming live on Facebook where you can interact with this as well. And but we also have Q&A. You can, put your questions in, or any questions or comments that you would like to make in the Q&A. You can also, put them in the chat, and we would definitely get back to any concerns or questions that you may have. So what I would like to say that we have Dr. Zena Crenshaw, that is the Chief of Operations for America United International. She's going to explain how to conduct our reverse interview. So brace yourself and get ready for this topic of discussion. It's something that the whole world needs to know. So I would like to also, have everyone that's listening to start sharing with your family, your friends, your neighbors, calling them and letting them know to tune into this broadcast. We're also going to be recording this link, and we're going to be sending it out, spreading it widely and sharing it as well. So thank you so much, Dr. Z. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Hi, Ms. Belinda, and greetings, everyone, and welcome to another Zoom broadcast of America United International. We got everyone in on the screen, and pretty soon we're going to be introducing our keynote guest, the fabulous Dr. Linda Cheek. But first, I want to tell everyone, if this is your first AUI interview, then you need to know how we handle things. It's called a reverse interview, and this is how it works. Well, we are really must be pretty narcissistic, because we have our guests come on and they talk. We have them share their knowledge and impressions of America United International, first of all, as a way of getting to know them. Isn't that amazing? We have them talk about us as a way of getting to know them. That's pretty nervy of us, but we hope that it's interesting, and it actually does help the audience get to know our guests in a very intimate way. The format, what we explained when we first introduced it, is that the format is like having a quiz show, and it's a combination of a quiz show and the Masked Singer, and This Is Your Life all in one. So, we're going to see how that goes over with Dr. Cheek. And we got everyone on the screen. Welcome, Dr. Cheek. You can go ahead and unmute yourself so we can get this reverse interview underway. Okay, there you go. So Ms. Belinda and I are going to step off the screen and give the stage to you, the virtual stage to you. But what we'd like for you to do, first of all, is to please share with our audience your description of America United International in as much detail as you think they need to understand what the campaign is all about. So let us step off the screen and get you featured front and center. Go ahead and tell us a bit about ourselves, Dr. Cheek, if you will.
Sure. Be happy to. America United International is a grassroots organization. That's very important, that it is made up of everyone in America, anyone in America that has, that has the knowledge or the desire to fight the injustice that we now see in America's justice system. The American justice system has become what we call weaponized, and it basically is being used against the citizens in a way that is basically against the color of law, and that they are getting away with it. And so what we're trying to do is trying to expose this to as many people as we can. We're also trying to make the United States of America be responsible in their signing of the agreement of the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, which is a mandate for having remedies for human rights when they are being abused. There's supposed to be a remedy for that, and we have not found that remedy so far in the American judicial system. So it's so important, and especially I applaud the people who formed the organization, because you've recognized this in the profession and the government basically, and are willing to step forward and point it out that this is number one against the American Declaration of Rights, and we're basically repeating history in that the people were not given rights back when America declared its independence. And so we're basically repeating that, saying, we have the rights, and these rights are being abused. And so now we need to form some means of just making sure that those rights do get protected.
Yes, yes.
Well, hopefully I've explained AUI.
You've done an excellent job. This is the first time Ms. Belinda and I have actually co-hosted an AUI interview. And so do you see the genius of this, Ms. Belinda? We have these celebrity endorsements, our guests. I thought that was an excellent description of America United International. What do you think, Ms. Belinda?
I absolutely, Dr. Z. Most importantly, even the way she broke it down to help people understand the importance of this campaign.
Yeah. And
we're going to be elaborating a little bit more on that and bring make it more crystal clear. Dr. Cheek, when we talk about the importance of this campaign, it's so much that we can discuss about this, but, you have broken down some real serious elements of the justice system what I'm trying to say is that people don't realize that a person can start out simply seeking justice for him or, for themselves, and eventually realize that the legal system have geared not to correct itself.
Exactly.
They're not even following their own laws or their own procedures, so we got to dig a little bit into that in this discussion. Exactly. When you are, doing everything right, and you have all the faith and trust in the system to do what's right, so that you can have the pursuit of justice, and then you find out that the system is being weaponized against you.
Exactly.
So, Dr. Z, come on.
Yeah, yes. Well, what I want to find out, Dr. Cheek, is we want to get a sense of the relevance of this campaign to you personally, professionally, if at all. So you heard Ms. Belinda talk about the kind of weaponization, how people go out seeking justice and they find out, you know, that's about the last thing they're going to accomplish when the system has been turned against them. Does any of that resonate with you? Do you either as personally, or you can begin talking with us about your work as an advocate as well? Go ahead.
I'm actually a second career physician. I didn't become a physician until I was at the age of 45. I was a teacher before that. So I got my MD degree in 1992 and finished my residency in 1995. So I was just starting my practice when all of this happened that created the opioid problem with doctors. And I was unaware that doctors were being attacked because it was before the time. That actually didn't start happening until 1998. So, you know, I was just completely and totally just believing, just like everybody else in America, that our justice system is just, and that if a person is charged with a crime, that they must have done it. And, you know, until you become a victim of the, you know, improprieties of the Justice Department to actually victimize and criminalize innocent citizens, you're not aware of what's going on. So I became aware of it in 2006 when my office was raided the first time.
Tell us about that. How do you go from being a teacher to, you know, taking on such a big career at a time where, you know, most people are really into the stride of their professional career. And then next thing you know, you tell us about your office getting raided. Okay, walk us through how all that happened.
Okay, well, basically, I mean, it just goes to show that they have an agenda. Okay, and I was a victim of that agenda because I came into medicine and I came to Southwest Virginia to work in a medically underserved area because I wanted to help people. I also found out very early on in my career that conventional medicine does not cure disease. So I studied alternative medicine and actually learned how to help people heal from disease, and I did that. The problem that I incurred was that I was against the establishment. I was healing people. They weren't having to go to the hospital. And so the hospitals and the governments are kind of in collusion against certain doctors, especially rural physicians, especially compassionate physicians, especially what I call the physicians that take care of the the expendable populations, the populations that are using government insurance, that are poor, that are elderly, and that or have no insurance. And so, you know, these are the populations that cost the government money instead of providing money to the government. And so they really don't want these folks. I'd rather just see them dead as alive. And they're actually being able to achieve that through what they've created now in the last 20 years, the opioid epidemic. So I, you know, went into medicine, helping people heal. I actually saved the government tons of money because I did not have to do the testing and so on. That now is just exorbitant prices, and got people back on their work, you know, doing work, get off disability. But because of the fact that there's just a collusion now with the government and conventional medicine to keep conventional medicine going, and I became a target. I'm an easy target. Doctors that are like me are very easy, low-hanging fruit, and that's what the government went after. So I became the target.
That's amazing. You hear that, Ms. Belinda. So what made you a low-hanging fruit? You say you were an easy target. Tell us why is that?
I was an independent physician. I was not owned by a hospital, so I did not have the hospital money behind me. Basically, when you're an independent physician, you send your claims into the government, especially if you're dealing with a lot of Medicare and Medicaid folks, which I was, and they don't pay. They have people who just, your payments just get pushed off to the side. When they finally ended up closing my office, the government owed me about $2 million that I never got paid for. So I literally had no income. I did have an office building. I made enough just to, you know, pay the staff or whatever. So I really never had any kind of money for any kind of big, you know, hire a law firm or anything. And I did have some assets. and the government goes after our assets. So if they can, and they're doing that tremendously now with doctors, because doctors are now finding out that it costs so much to go to court with and not plea, that they actually will plea and just, basically pay the government hundreds of thousands of dollars and end up being criminals, simply because that's the easiest way it was. And that's actually the way I took the first time. I actually did plead to a crime I did not commit with the first attack. And so, because I did not have money for defense.
Okay, well, we want to hear more about what happened to you individually, but let's get some clarity for our audience. Tell us more specifically, when you say the government, what office, who's involved at that point?
Okay, in Southwest Virginia, it's primarily the Western District of Virginia, which is a federal district. It's a federal system. They are using the way the federal system, even though according to the law, federal law is not supposed to be a jurisdiction over medicine. That's a state mandate. That's under state control. But because of the Controlled Substance Act, which is how they're doing all of this, the Controlled Substance Act allows the federal government to then charge us with crimes based on prescribing a controlled substance. And so that's the government, in my case, is the federal government. And for most of the cases where you're involving doctors being attacked, since that's the only way they can actually make money off of you is by charging you with crimes using controlled substances, using the Controlled Substance Act, using the Comprehensive Asset Forfeiture Act of 1984, that they can basically take all of your assets and charge you with a crime, leave you destitute, force you to a plea, criminalize you, never let you get your license back, and then move on to the next, quote, low-hanging fruit. So it's just one case after another.
So I've heard physicians say basically the government comes after you as if you're some type of drug dealer, because you're prescribing pain medications, what are they called, narcotics, to treat pain of your patients. Is that the way it works?
Yes, in 1999, the Congress had a kind of like they took the DEA and the Department of Justice and had a supervision of them. And what they saw was that the DEA was not, quote, bringing home the bacon that they were supposed to be bringing home in attacking the drug cartels. Because, drug cartels make a lot of money. And when the government came up with the 1984 law, they assumed that they could go out and get all that drug cartel money, but they weren't doing it. And so a very smart DEA officer, Asa Hutchison, decided to turn the direction of the DEA against the drug cartels and into prescription drugs. And he basically equated a prescription drug, and they used OxyContin as the drug of choice to attack. And they made it to look like it was the same as cocaine. They actually quoted them saying OxyContin gives you a heroin-like high. And they basically equated real, pain relieving medications with what drug cartels sell out on the streets. So that was the beginning. That was in 1999 up through 2002. And so the government basically criminalized the drug, so that basically, this is what the DEA believes, and this is what they teach their officers, that any opioid is a drug of abuse. Anyone who takes an opioid is a drug abuser. Anyone who prescribes an opioid is a drug pusher. Doctors are drug pushers, therefore doctors are criminals, therefore doctors need to be convicted. And they have spread this propaganda across the United States through the media, through their own processes in the court system. And so that there is basically most of your jurors now sitting in a jury believe those 5 things. So but the problem is, problem number 1 is not true. So, that's the whole thing is the entire system is based on a lie. And yet they're putting people in prison because of it.
Wow. So we've got the Drug Enforcement Agency, so most of the time our constituents, I think, Ms. Belinda, we're hearing about, either local law enforcement or maybe the FBI. I don't know. I think that's usually what we're encountering. So now with this constituency, the targeted doctors, the drug enforcement agency, that's the law enforcement, the investigatory agency that's involved. And then you talked about the federal prosecutors. Okay. Tell us about the defense attorney and how effective are they in protecting the doctors when they face these charges? What was your experience, and what happens generally as far as you're aware? Because we're gonna move at some point, but we want to know more about your personal circumstances, because you're a founder of Doctors of Courage, which is a nonprofit advocacy group assisting doctors who are embattled the way you described. But tell us a bit more from your personal circumstances, the defense attorneys, the criminal defense attorneys that are supposed to be protecting you. How are they effective? Are they a defense to this type of, as you say, weaponization of the legal system?
Most part, no, because most of them are white collar criminal defense attorneys, and they're not, they have no way of knowing how to fight the propaganda against opioids. They basically think that they can fight it by pulling up a doctor's record. And so what you have in the courtroom then is the prosecution saying this doctor is a criminal because he prescribed opioids to a group of jurors that believe that, to the defense attorney saying, oh, but look at the doctor's record. The doctor's, examined this patient and blah, blah, blah. You can't use plain white collar defense in these cases. You'll lose every time. So most doctors that hire white collar criminal lawyers don't have a chance. There are a few cases where there are specialties in the country that do specialize in criminalization of medicine that are making some headway, but for the most part, they're not. And then, of course, you have your public defenders. Since most doctors like myself end up with no assets and cannot hire a lawyer, we end up with public defenders. And I can't tell you how poor my opinion is of public defenders. I do know I've had people say that public defenders, some of them are actually more intelligent and better at their job than the prosecution. In my case, I had a public defender who was a private lawyer, but she had to do her time doing public defending. Okay, so I was her public defense case. And my opinion of what transpired there was she didn't make any money on me, so she really didn't do anything for me. And even the information that I gave her that would have shown the perjury going on, the lies going on, and the actual law breaking going on in the courtroom to convict me, her response was, she shrugged her shoulders and said, well, what do you expect?
Mm. Well, let's talk about that for a few minutes, because we're gonna move to talking about Doctors of Courage. I still want to know more about what happened to you. I mentioned with our last speaker that we need to dispel the notion among the general, just people right here in the United States and also around the world that, you're targeted doctors. And so now, okay, you got only 2 Mercedes-Benz instead of 3 Mercedes-Benz. And now, okay, they took your summer home and you only have to stay in 1 mansion. So we need to, really talk about, is that what we're talking about when we talk about embattled physicians, people who have a little less, but still a lot? So we want to hear about that. But first of all, Ms. Belinda knows much better than I do this phenomenon that the public defenders are ineffective. I personally, from where I practice law in Northwest Indiana, our public defenders were private attorneys, and a lot of them, unfortunately, were very experienced criminal defense attorneys, but because of other dynamics in our area, they were still trying to supplement their income by doing public defense work. But the point what I'm getting to is they were some of the best criminal defense attorneys around. So they were very good public defenders, it's within the limits of that role, because it is high volume and you're not making a lot of money. But so Ms. Belinda can talk about the effectiveness of public defenders, but I want to talk about that as compared to any other criminal defense attorney when they're going up against a government machine. Is it any different?
Absolutely. I like the way Dr. Cheek rolled out her experience with the public defender, especially when she said that, she can sit in the courtroom and observe the law being broken or the law not being followed. And then all you do is get a shoulder, shrug at you. And, I just wanted to ask you too, Dr. Cheek, that, whether or not you would determine some type of political connection with what you see, what you were experiencing in the courtroom. Tell us whether or not you may have seen it, or you may have determined that it could have been some type of political connection with your experience.
I'm just under the supposition, I really don't have any proof, but it was my impression that if she basically did nothing for me and I ended up being convicted, that there would be some private person that she was defending that would get a better deal. That was my impression. I was a sell-off.
Wow, absolutely. And we here in Louisiana, we call it trading, trading it off for a more opportune time or a better deal, or, but, Dr. Z, that with the public defenders, it's a major conflict of interest when it comes to whether or not you're going to be able to have the representation in your defense. So, what's really sad when it comes to you paying a lawyer or attorney thousands, maybe hundreds and thousands of dollars to defend you, but the fix is in. It's all about, who gonna get traded or swapped for what? So it seems as though with the blatant distrust, public trust, when it comes to you're pursuing justice up under these type of circumstances, it is heart-wrenching. I'm telling you, it is almost unbearable when you are in this trap and you are sitting in the midst of these people. You can just feel the wicked, and everything coming at you like a freight train, and it's nothing, absolutely nothing you can do about it. That is devastating.
We want to, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dr. Z. I just wanted to make that clear and just say that is one of the main reasons why AUI is on the scene.
Exactly. And we haven't even gotten to where the buck is supposed to stop, which is at the judge's bench, because it's the judiciary that's responsible for a fair and impartial administration of justice. And that begins with the cop on the street, or whether it's the FBI, the DEA, the prosecutors, the private defense attorneys. It's the judge on the bench that's supposed to make sure it's like a orchestra, that what we get is the music of a fair and impartial administration of justice. So we're going to talk, we haven't gotten to that role. And then another thing that I hope we have time to talk about, is really clipping along the time, the role of the insurance companies, because we couldn't get to this in our last interview, but we had an audience member who was shooting at the end questions about the role of insurance companies that are supposed to be paying these medical bills in getting the government to go after these private doctors because they don't want to pay the bills. You talked about you focus in on the Medicaid and the Medicare, but there are also doctors who are being targeted because of the bills they're submitting to private insurance companies. So tell us just a little bit more about the toll this prosecution had on you, personally, and then we won't interrupt if you can just go in and talk about how you came to be part of Doctors of Courage.
Well, just to me, just the amount of prosecutorial misconduct that is just so rampant, and there's nothing that's being done about it. For example, several of their witnesses against me, employees like the doctor who took care of the patients to write controlled substances because I couldn't. They visited her home multiple times, 6 or more agents from FBI, HHS, DEA, and so on, to get her to lie. And then when she did lie on the witness stand, again, my public defender did nothing to show that it was a lie, even though I gave her the evidence. Okay, so the prosecutorial misconduct, the taking my nurse in and holding her in an interrogation room for 6 hours and telling her, if you don't tell on the witness stand what we tell you to say on the witness stand, which was all lies, we will put you in prison. Now, she basically stood up against them and never bowed under, but the doctor did. The doctor literally did commit perjury on the witness stand. And then the collaboration with the judge. I can't really point my finger too much at the judge on my case till the very end. And the very end, basically what happened was I talked with the doctor who testified against me to get her at my sentencing to say something for my character, about my character being good. And I had gotten permission from my lawyer to do that. I said, because you can't talk to government witnesses. It says pre-trial. Okay, well, I considered when the trial was over, I could talk to her. And I asked my defense attorney, and she said, yes, you can. So I went to Kathy's house, and I talked with her. And that's when I found out that they had been visiting her, and basically plying her with all the information they wanted her to say on the witness stand. And when I emailed her, this is another thing about prosecution that I think is wrong, the government, and that is their invasion into our emails. I know that they were being able to scan my emails, even though there should be some privacy laws that prevent that, because the day that I emailed Kathy to say, this is what we talked about, and this is what you're going, these are the points that you made, I emailed that to her. 2 hours later, I was being charged for being at her house that day and making it a obstruction of justice charge. Now, the thing was, that wasn't the day I visited her. And the day that they were claiming that I was visiting her, I was sitting in my living room with the probation officer from the first attack. So I had a perfectly legitimate alibi. Otherwise, I'd have had more charges. But when that went before the judge, that I had talked with her, I had exposed the fact that they had visited her and basically caused her to commit perjury. His response, he got extremely angry, and he said, he actually charged me with obstruction of justice. He says, you were not supposed to talk to her until after sentencing. That's post-trial, not the pre-trial thing. And he did charge me and gave me 6 more months of time for supposedly talking to this witness and exposing the prosecution for their perjury, their forced perjury on her. So that's just, in my opinion, one of the connections. And although I can say that I think Judge Conrad has been fairly fair, of course, the fact that he convicted, or he didn't convict. Oh, another thing that, it's all about the money and what they can get from us. Well, in my case, I was convicted of 172 charges of prescribing without a DEA certificate, even though it was this other doctor that did the prescribing, not me. They were my charges. And but the jury found me innocent of using my office to commit a crime. I thought that was interesting. But because that particular charge was the way that the government would actually confiscate my building, the judge turned the conviction around and said, no, you're guilty of using your office to commit a crime. So I'm reversing that jury decision. And so they basically then confiscated my office and sold it. So interesting, huh?
Amazing. So how are you coming to the conclusion that the judge was fair? What else would, I mean, this is these two examples are pretty damning. What else was he doing that otherwise struck you as him being fair and I presume impartial?
Well, I mean, in many cases, in many other cases, doctors are getting 25 to life in prison. He was at least nice, I guess you could say, to me. He only charged me with 33 months of incarceration, and he basically said that he was going light on me, even though he was putting me in prison. Here I have a handicapped husband who was blind and has cerebral palsy, and literally was, treated, having to stay home by himself, worse than I was in prison. And Judge Conrad knew Bill personally, by the way, through Bill's work. But he only gave me 33 months, but he said he was doing it so he put me in prison to use me as an example to other doctors. Okay. But then he said, well, because you did write that letter to the DEA, and I wrote a letter to the DEA explaining what I was doing, he said that's why he only gave me a lower sentence, lower than the actual amount that would have been for the number of milligrams that I was charged with. It was lower than what the guidelines gave him. So, I mean, in my case, I think that he was, fairly generous in that regard.
Wow.
He also did take me off probation a year early. So I appreciate that as well.
33 months. How much time did you actually spend in prison?
96.
What was that? Some reason I can't hear you.
26 months.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so okay, 26 months, and your husband, who was blind and had cerebral palsy, had to fend for himself during that time period. Okay, and that's an example of a nice outcome. Okay, now, and also finish the story. So when you came out, you just moved into your winter mansion. Is that what happened? And you were down to those 2 Mercedes. Is that the outcome? Tell us about that.
No, literally, when I left prison, I had the clothes on my back. The government had taken everything. The loan company took my house. Because they took me away to prison from the sentencing date. And I was not made aware that that was even an option. I thought at least that they would give me a time that I didn't even think they were going to send me to prison first off. But if they did, that I would get a sentencing date and I could take care of selling things and whatever. So I ended up with everything being confiscated either by the government or by my house. Everything that my house had in it went to the bank. And so I came out with nothing. I do have a wonderful husband, and he stood by me. And so I basically, without him and his house, they did try to take his house, by the way. But we got married after the first raid on me. So when we got married, we actually did a prenuptial so that everything that was his, everything that was mine, and never the twain shall meet. And so when the government tried to take his house, saying it was also an asset forfeiture, and we said, nope, you can't do that. Here's the prenup. The sad face on the prosecution was just, wish I could have taken a picture of it. But so anyway, I do have a home. Thankfully, it's his house. And I now have an income of Social Security of $1,200 a month. So I'm, kind of in the bottom echelon of income now, but that's okay. I'm 72 years old. I don't need a lot to live off of, so I'm good.
Wow.
One of the sad things about my case all of our cases is the loss of family. When I went to prison, before I went to prison, when I was being charged with all of this, I met with one of my sons who had kind of estranged himself from me. And we had kind of a meeting, and he said, you must have done something wrong or they wouldn't have come after you. So literally he broke off with me and would not have anything to do with me. So I stopped. I did not see my granddaughter in that family from the time she was probably 18 months or so until she was like 5. I do now have made connections with my family, with my two sons and their families, and I do see them now, and we have a good relationship. I still do not have a relationship with my sister, who basically was caught up in this because she had helped finance the office building. Wow. And so she got caught up in it, and we are still estranged. So family issues are really bad.
Tell us about Doctors of Courage, if you would.
Doctors of Courage, when I went to prison, I was first at Alderson Prison Camp, which is no camp cupcake, let me tell you. But because I was a person who did not like to see the laws being broken in prison, and I would point them out to them when they broke laws, the procedures and so on in prison, I got basically set up to be moved to another prison. So I went then to SFF Hazleton in West Virginia, which was actually a blessing for me, okay? Because in Alderson, you have to work. In SFF Hazleton, you don't have to. So I went to the law library, and I spent my whole year in the law library studying the law. So the whole thing, what I learned was all the cases of doctors being attacked, of people being attacked for drug use or whatever. And I learned that these laws were being used inappropriately, and that they really have no rights to be putting us in prison for that. This is all state, supposedly governed by states, not by the feds. And their use of the Controlled Substance Act is not what the Controlled Substance Act was ever intended to be for. So when I came out of prison, I just decided that something has to be done about this. So I started doing webinars, and I started trying to teach folks, and I actually started my 7 Pillars of Total Health website first, to still help people learn how they could heal themselves. And then I developed the Doctors of Courage website to spread the word about the illegal attacks on doctors, kind of like trying to follow Siobhan Reynolds' footsteps. And it's basically for doctors and patients. I just called it Doctors of Courage for the acronym DOC. So people could keep that in their mind, and, you know, we could use the hashtag DOC or whatever and help spread the word. And we do have the word get out there. We have a lot of hits now. We're #1 on the Google search when people look up doctors' names. So, you know, we really do have a good face out there in the public, and hopefully will, through connections like with AUI, through, you know, our work, we hopefully can stop these attacks on not only doctors. This is bigger than just doctors. This is attacks on minorities for drug use. Drugs do not cause addiction. And we've got to get joined together, because the whole idea of attacking minorities for drug and using drugs as the reason to attack minorities is pure disenfranchisement and putting prisons in prison so that they can have jobs for people to do that. And we've got to bring that to an end. So that's the purpose of Doctors of Courage.
It's powerful. And you mentioned Siobhan Reynolds, and I just want to explain to her, because I knew her before her unfortunate death. I think she died in an airplane crash. Is that right?
Right.
Yes. And she was a pain advocate, a patient advocate, pain patient advocate. And so she championed the cause of the doctors who were being targeted, because they weren't able to, you know, provide proper medical care for people who were suffering debilitating pain at times.
Right. She had her husband. Her husband had a severe pain problem. He was not being appropriately treated. And so she became an advocate based on him. And then she got into with Dr. Schneider in Kansas. So then the government turned on her, and they charged her with obstruction of justice. And then she had to hire a lawyer. And it was she and her lawyer flying from Washington, D.C. after meeting there to the central area. And I mean, this is like a little bit of a conspiracy theory that I truly do believe. Basically, what happened was her plane crashed at night 50 feet off of the runway that they were approaching. And there was no reason for her to miss the runway, except that the instrumentation showed the runway to be 50 feet to the right. So they crashed into a grassy field.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it's not just a conspiracy. Dr. Cheeks, it certainly could have been some type of manipulation, and because I just admire your courage to become an advocate for so many other people after you have been victimized so badly by this corruption.
I just tell people, if I die accident, if there's a weird way that I die, it's probably not weird.
Well,
we all need that T-shirt.
Absolutely. Because we have seen it happen so much in the past when it comes to that type of foul play. But it's all about being in a position now with AUI that we're ganging up on them like they have ganged up on us. And that's why I'm so excited about this campaign, that it has been a long time coming, but it's well worth waiting for now that we're here in this place, talking to people, interviewing you. And I'm hoping that many, many more would come to this place where they can also have this opportunity to be interviewed and talk about the importance of AUI. So thank you so much. I know we're getting close to the end of time. Dr. Z, I know we want to make a few other points in regards to her being one of the co-founders of AUI that I'm so excited about, just knowing that we're in this place now. And that I feel like, we're harnessing this power and this authority that we have to change this corrupt government. The power is definitely with the people.
Yes, for sure. And, and what's this is, Dr. Cheese has provided such a powerful testament. So hopefully it will help people understand why this is something that cannot wait. America United International is a campaign whose time has come. We have to carve out protection for ourselves. The people who signed the Declaration of Independence and declared themselves independent of Britain and the King of Britain, who was a tyrant, they declared that it was their God-given right, this is called natural law, to protect themselves from that type of threat on the part of government to life, liberty, and property. These stories are not something that we just have to submit ourselves to because it happens to play out in a courtroom. And the judge signs off, and it's a prosecutor, and it's a jury that gets convicted, and we have a right, an inherent right to defend ourselves. And so American United International, we're taking up the banner that they took up in 1776, and we're changing the terms of our government. We're saying, if you're not going to effectively protect us from abuses of power, then we need to carve out protections for ourselves. And we're doing it lawfully. We're going to the International Criminal Court and asking for an investigation of President Biden. He's been informed of these developments, yet he's been totally unresponsive. And a lot of people don't realize that bystanding to abuses of the court is itself a crime against humanity. Now, you might think that what happened to you in court was a crime against humanity, but when our government officials bystand to that and don't give us effective protection, meaning protection that really works, not this runaround, that people go through for years, going to this agency, this disciplinary complaint, that disciplinary, and none of it working. Bystanding to that ineffectiveness is a crime against humanity. And then we also are reaching out to the U.S. Supreme Court and trying to fashion a remedy where the Supreme Court protects us. And we're basically you're saying, okay, until Congress or the president sets up a FEMA where we can come before this Federal Emergency Management Agency, whatever they want to call it, and we're not dealing with a natural disaster, we're dealing with a man-made disaster, the corruption of the courts. then we should be able to go to the U.S. Supreme Court and have, since it's the high court of the land, it has supervisory authority over all the lower federal courts and significant authority over the state courts. And it should issue an order that halts these judicial rulings that say we got to go to prison, we've got to give up our children to Child Protective Services, we've got to stay away from our vulnerable adult family members who are now caught up in these, questionable probate guardianships. Put a halt to that.
And not to mention that they come in and take away all of our possessions.
There you go, because then you're financially unstable. You can't fight back. We got to put a halt to that until Congress or the president steps in and gives us this FEMA. I'm still looking at the time because we need to talk about our upcoming shows, but we still have about 2 or 3 more minutes. Go ahead, Ms. Belinda.
Well, I want to make this very important point, Dr. Z, because what the people really need to understand, after listening to Dr. Cheek and her, whole testimony of how this have literally, brought a clear light to why it's so important that AUI is on the scene now. And listen, I really want the people to know and understand, that what it all really comes down to, what AUI comes down to, is that the responsibility of America's judicial system, this whole court system, is they have to be responsible now to ensure, to make sure that our country conducts a fair and impartial administration of justice. And when we say that, we mean that. And that's the reason why we are the people. The court belongs to us. The power is with the people. We cannot wait for this. What, like Dr. Z just said, while they come in and take all of our possessions away, put us in prison, destroy our families, we can't wait for this. And so that, it's a need for our audience, Dr. Z, is to get in, to know what it is that they need to do to get involved with this movement, because this is a movement. When we're saying that we're declaring our Declaration of Independence as a people, this is something that we want every victim out there. Like Dr. Cheek said earlier, this is not just happening to the doctors, but they're also going after other mainstream groups, the veterans. We can name so many, and especially when it comes to the Black and brown people, and the defenseless. So we're ready for this, and we're not backing up. We're going all the way forward, 100% in, and we're saying that we want a federal emergency agency to come in and allow us to have our voices heard when these type of things are happening to us, when we're being weaponized and beat up by our own legal system.
Exactly. Ms. Belinda, let me share some contact information. First of all, if you see in the chat, we have the website for Doctors of Courage. Dr. Cheek, go ahead and share your contact information. How should people get in touch with you and Doctors of Courage?
The best way is through my email, lindacheekmd@gmail.com. So I'm more on my email. I'm not really a phone person. I don't get too much. To me, kind of talking on the phone is just a lot of times a waste of time. I can read faster than I can talk sometimes. So I like the emails. And then for the website, for people to just follow the amount of prosecutorial misconduct going on against doctors. They're just post after post after post of the fabrications of criminalization going on the website, www.doctorsofcourage.org.
Okay. www.doctorsofcourage.org. And when you want to look at particularly the role of America's judiciary in facilitating these seeming miscarriages of justice, then stop on by www.americaunitedinternational.net. All one word, all lowercase, www.americaunitedinternational.net. We want you to come by our website, learn more about this campaign, join our efforts, and donate so we can sustain this work. Even small contributions go far when many people make a contribution. And it's essential that we do this. You know, and then I was just talking with Dr. Cheek before we got started on the program. People, like we have submitted paperwork to the Supreme Court and to the International Criminal Court, and a lot of people are sitting back and trying to see how that goes. And you know, if they give us an obstacle, which they've already created obstacles for us in the clerk's office at the Supreme Court, and people like, oh no, you know, I knew we weren't going to be able to get this done, and you know, they get understandably full of despair. And what I was emphasizing is that this is a historical moment. The unresponsiveness of our government to the plight of the people who are the targets of what seems to be the weaponization of our country's legal system has triggered our right, our natural right to change the terms of government. And whatever our government does, you know, the Supreme Court, the White House, Congress, their response to us is historic. And we should see ourselves as not shaping history and watching history. So if they decide to, rather than be honorable and live up to their constitutional pledges, their oath, and instead get slippery and slimy, then that's part of history being written. And we're at America United International are committed to keep pressing for accountability and keep pressing to try to get our country on track, at least, you know, halfway consistent, some semblance of abiding by the rule of law and not the rule of corrupt men. Okay, AUI is you. YOU this is our solution, and it's our job to sustain this campaign. None of us cause organized abuse of the U.S. legal system, but working together, we can certainly solve that problem. Now, this week, we're going to be talking about predatory policing. On Wednesday, I have in the chat some links to the last link is to the events calendar for AUI. You'll see these events. We're going to be streaming live on Wednesday evening at, I think it's 7:30 Central Time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll talk about predatory policing in the context of trying to combat law enforcement abuses of power. And then on Friday, we're going to be we're going to gather once again on Zoom, and we're going to be talking to some law enforcement, U.S. law enforcement whistleblowers. So we're not, you know, this is about justice. This is not about being for or against anybody but people who are liberty loving and justice loving. So we'll be doing that on Friday, I think at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So you have the links. If nothing else, go to americaunitedinternational.net and you'll have all our contact information. We've come up on the end of our hour. So go ahead, Ms. Melinda.
Say one more thing. I am so excited that we're ramping this up and that we have gotten tremendous response on this campaign. So, we're inviting, don't wait until something happens. This is America United International. This is a people's movement to change our, and listen, Dr. Z said it best earlier. We're following the lead of our Declaration of Independence. So we have a solid foundation, a very strong ground to stand on, and what we're saying is that it's unprecedented. It's time for the people to support this, to unite with this, to come together so we can get it done in 2021. I believe that we only have a few, months left or days left in this year, but if nothing else, let's put it on the map right here, right now, that AUI is saying time out, cold blue, and we're pushing the red button to go forward to make sure that this never, ever happens to anyone else in this country. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And again, stay tuned for what's coming next.